Let's talk about the 10 poorest states in the US and what keeps them from catching up. If you look around the country, you'll see that some states face a much tougher climb when it comes to jobs, the economy, and just having a decent standard of living. These differences aren't just by chance. They come from a mix of things: where the state is located, what resources it has, which industries moved in, and honestly, what choices local leaders have made over the years. Policies make a difference. Some states go all out to attract big companies with low taxes and incentives. Others have higher taxes and more regulations, and that can drive away investors and keep new jobs from starting up. That's a big part of why money and opportunity end up piling up in a few places, while other states get stuck in a cycle of poverty with not much chance for things to change. One of the clearest ways to see how people are really doing in a state: check the median household income. It shows you what life is like for the typical family, not just the average that billionaires can skew. In the poorest states, families usually take home around $50,000 a year. That might sound like enough, until you add up the expenses. Picture a family of 5. They'll spend nearly $19,000 a year just on housing, $10,000 on food, $2,500 for a car or gas, and $10,000 in taxes. After all that, they might have $8,500 left for everything else: clothes, doctor visits, emergencies, all of it, and that's if nothing goes wrong. One setback, a hospital stay, a lost job, the car breaking down, and suddenly they're in real trouble. You might think social programs would help more, but in a lot of these states, the safety nets just don't go far enough. Food stamps, Medicaid, unemployment, they all fall short. Add in underfunded schools and a lack of decent jobs, and people get stuck. It doesn't matter how hard they work, it's just tough to get ahead. It's kind of wild, especially since America's total GDP is around $23 trillion. There's enough money out there to take a shot at these problems, but it's not reaching the people who need it the most. Before we jump into the list, do us a favor and subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. That way you won't miss when we dig into the real stories happening across the country. Alright, let's get into it. Here are the 10 poorest states in America, and what's keeping them down. Number 10. Tennessee. Tennessee has some of the highest sales taxes in the country, and unlike a lot of other states, it doesn't have a broad income tax to balance things out. So people at the bottom end up spending more of what they make just to cover basic needs. The results aren't great. About 13% of people in Tennessee don't have enough to eat, and 1 in 5 kids lives below the poverty line. The minimum wage hasn't budged above the federal minimum in years, so a lot of people are stuck in low-paying jobs. If you live out in the rural areas, it's even harder. Not enough good schools, not enough doctors, and jobs are few and far between. The median household income is just over $59,000, well below the national average. That lack of money affects everything. People don't live as long, crime rates are higher, and things like healthcare, schools, and even voting access just aren't as good as they should be. These problems have pushed a lot of people to leave, looking for better jobs somewhere else. That's actually left South Carolina with a labor shortage for the jobs that remain. The economy here depends on manufacturing, agriculture, and tourism industries that can get hit hard by economic downturns, automation, or competition from overseas. Most people live in rural parts of the state, which just makes things tougher finding good work, getting health care, or just making it through the day. The state's economy depends heavily on manufacturing, farming, and tourism, 3 sectors that suffer whenever the economy changes. New technology comes in, or global competition gets tougher. Most people live in rural areas, which just adds to the challenges. Businesses have a hard time finding enough workers, and many residents struggle to access basic services. This leads to ongoing poverty, schools that don't have enough funding, and infrastructure like roads and bridges that are falling apart. Breaking that cycle is tough. Number 8. Oklahoma. Median household income here is about $55,826, well below the national average. Oklahoma faces major challenges. Its infrastructure is outdated and falling behind. It relies too much on oil and gas for jobs and tax revenue, and its schools are underperforming. When schools lack funding and students aren't getting the education they need, it's hard to build up a skilled workforce. This makes it more difficult to attract new businesses or support better-paying industries. Companies looking to move to Oklahoma often pass it by, either because there aren't enough qualified workers or because the roads and utilities aren't up to standard. In 2021, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave Oklahoma's infrastructure a C-, which says a lot to potential investors. All these issues make it very difficult for Oklahoma to keep and create good jobs, and they continue to fuel the cycle of poverty. Number 7. Kentucky. Kentucky's situation goes back to its history in coal mining and manufacturing industries that have mostly faded away over the years. When those jobs disappeared, the state struggled to build new industries or train people for other kinds of work, especially in rural parts of the state. Now, many Kentuckians face limited job opportunities, schools that don't have enough resources, and problems accessing health care. The opioid crisis has made things even harder, hitting families and communities especially hard. With median household income below the national average and stubborn poverty in both urban and rural areas, Kentucky's challenges show how hard it is to recover when your main industries shut down. Coal towns have been hit the hardest recently. The move toward renewable energy, stricter regulations, and cheaper natural gas have all reduced coal's role. So, towns that depended on mining for steady jobs are now dealing with unemployment and an uncertain future. It's not just small family farms are up against unpredictable weather, unstable crop prices, and big agribusinesses taking over. That means less profit and fewer jobs, making it harder for rural families to get by. Combine that with Kentucky's educational problems and high poverty rates, and you get a median household income stuck at $55,573. For many, moving up just doesn't feel possible. Now, looking at New Mexico, in the Southwest, the state's economy depends a lot on public sector jobs. Government and schools make up a large share of employment. NMSU reports about 24% of all jobs are in those areas, which shapes how things run there. But New Mexico's schools have faced problems for a long time. Many students don't finish high school, shown by the state's low literacy rate of 70.9%. That kind of education gap has big effects: higher rates of homelessness, more food insecurity, and not enough workers with the skills businesses are looking for. Without a well-educated workforce, it's hard for New Mexico to attract new industries or encourage innovation, and that keeps the cycle of poverty and instability going in many communities. Alabama's economy stretches back generations, shaped by its history and geography, but for many people it's always been an uphill battle. In the early years, cotton was king, dominating the landscape and the livelihoods of most Alabamians, but the legacy of slavery and deep-seated inequality continues to cast a long shadow over the state to this day. Black Alabamians in particular often feel the effects of that history. Most sharply, poverty rates are higher, and the social and economic barriers laid down decades or even centuries ago are still blocking progress. While the median household income lands at $53,913, that single figure hides the deep divides between communities and doesn't capture the reality faced by many families. Alabama's economy never diversified much. Instead, it stuck with what it knew: agriculture, manufacturing, and extracting natural resources like coal and timber. Those industries supported the state for a long time. But as the world changed and those sectors shrank or moved elsewhere, good jobs started to evaporate, leaving a lot of people scrambling to find work or forced to accept low-wage positions with little chance of advancement. The state has struggled to attract new types of businesses or industries: tech, green energy, finance. So when the old industries falter, Alabama's economy takes a hard hit. Without a new economic engine, recovery is slow, and it's tough for families and communities to break out of cycles of hardship. If you look at Arkansas, you'll find a story that runs along similar lines. The average household brings in about $52,528 a year, which is close to Alabama. but most of the state is still rural, with people depending on jobs in farming, forestry, or sometimes working in factories that make products like firearms. These jobs are often physically demanding and rarely come with high pay or opportunities to move up the ladder. Generational poverty is hard to shake when the work available doesn't offer a path to something better. Education is another struggle. Schools in Arkansas are often underfunded, and test scores tend to lag behind national averages, trapping families in cycles where kids don't get the skills or credentials they need to pursue higher-paying work. Infrastructure is a big issue too. The American Society of Civil Engineers rated Arkansas's infrastructure at a D+, pointing to crumbling roads, unreliable electricity, and outdated water systems. These problems don't just make daily life more difficult, they actively hold back growth by making it harder for businesses to operate and for workers to get where they need to go. Poor infrastructure also means less access to healthcare, fewer options for shopping or banking, and greater isolation for rural communities. All these issues combine to create a vicious circle. Less economic activity means lower tax revenues, which in turn means less public investment and consumer spending, putting even more strain on schools, hospitals, and businesses trying to survive. Louisiana's experience echoes many of the same themes, but with its own unique challenges. For decades, the state has relied heavily on big industries like oil, gas, and petrochemicals. These sectors have brought in serious revenue during boom times, but they're also extremely vulnerable to global market swings when prices crash or big companies pull out. Entire communities feel the pain almost overnight. This boom and bust cycle has left Louisiana with some of the widest income gaps in the nation, making it especially hard for people in marginalized communities to climb out of poverty. Job losses ripple through the economy, affecting not just workers in the oil fields or refineries, but also teachers, small business owners, and healthcare providers who depend on a healthy local economy. Education is often a casualty. Louisiana schools consistently rank near the bottom nationally, and struggling districts have a hard time attracting or keeping good teachers. That makes it even less likely that new industries will set up shop or that young people will have the skills they need to succeed in a changing world. On top of these economic hurdles, Louisiana faces relentless challenges from nature. Hurricanes and floods pound the state almost every year, destroying homes and infrastructure. Recovery can take years, draining resources and forcing families to start over again and again. Each disaster disrupts lives, erodes savings, and pushes people further away from financial security, making it even more difficult for communities to build lasting prosperity. West Virginia's story is a testament to how quickly fortunes can change. With a median income of $51,248, families there have always had to stretch their budgets, but things got much worse after the coal industry collapsed. For generations, coal was the backbone of West Virginia's economy, supporting entire towns and funding schools, hospitals, and public services. When demand dried up and mines closed, thousands of workers lost stable, well-paying jobs almost overnight. The economic fallout was devastating, not just for miners, but for everyone who depended on the money that flowed through those communities. Unlike some places that managed to reinvent themselves, West Virginia has struggled to attract new industries, technology companies, renewable energy producers, advanced manufacturers, and efforts to diversify the economy have moved painfully slowly. The state's rugged mountains make everything harder and more expensive, whether it's building new highways, running fiber optic cables for high-speed internet, or transporting goods in and out. Without modern infrastructure and reliable services, it's a steep climb to convince businesses to move in or to help residents connect to better jobs elsewhere. As a result, progress drags, and communities are left waiting for opportunities that never seem to arrive. Mississippi stands apart as a place where old challenges stubbornly refuse to go away. Tucked into the southeast, it's a state where poverty, low educational attainment, and a lack of good jobs have been stubborn fixtures for generations. Despite decades of effort, the median household income remains among the lowest in the country, and many families rely on low-wage farm work or service jobs that offer little security or room for advancement. Schools often struggle with inadequate funding, and graduation rates continue to lag, making it hard for young people to get the qualifications they need to break out of poverty. This lack of opportunity feeds a cycle that's tough to escape, as each generation faces the same hurdles as the last. Health outcomes in Mississippi are harsh, rates of chronic illness are high, and access to quality medical care is limited, especially in rural areas. That means families not only struggle to make ends meet, but are also more likely to face serious health problems that make it even harder to get ahead. The weight of history inequality, segregation, and a lack of investment compounds all these challenges, so that for many people in Mississippi, every day is a fight just to get by. Moving forward often feels like climbing a steep hill, and for countless families, the hope of a brighter, more prosperous future still seems heartbreakingly out of reach.